What would you do if a simple trip, a chance to relax and unwind, turned into an unforgettable battle for dignity and respect? Aaron and Mia Walker had one goal: to celebrate their anniversary with a peaceful getaway. But one unexpected moment changed everything. It started with a passing remark from a flight attendant, an insult wrapped in bitterness that cut deeper than anyone around them seemed to realize. Faced with public humiliation and silence from those who should have intervened, Aaron and Mia made a bold decision. They would not stay silent. But speaking up wasn't easy. Their journey would take them from a tense flight cabin to a packed corporate conference room and eventually lead them to build something extraordinary, something that would empower countless others to find their voices too. In this story, you'll witness how two ordinary people transformed a painful experience into a movement fueled by resilience, kindness, and hope. But how did they do it? What obstacles stood in their way? And how did their quiet strength ripple out to create lasting change? The warm hum of the airplane engines was comforting, lulling passengers into a state of calm. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, painting golden streaks across the cabin. Aaron and Mia Walker sat side by side near the middle of the plane. Aaron, a tall man with an athletic build, leaned slightly against the window, his thoughts drifting. Mia, petite but strong-willed, was flipping through a travel magazine, her dark curls falling over one shoulder. They had spent months saving for this trip, a week-long vacation in Hawaii, to celebrate their 5-year wedding anniversary. It had been a tough year for them both. Aaron, a high school teacher, had spent long nights grading papers and coaching the school's track team. Mia, a nurse at a busy city hospital, was often on her feet for 12-hour shifts. The trip was supposed to be a break from all that, a chance to reconnect and recharge. Mia glanced at Aaron, noticing the way his eyes softened as he looked out at the sky. "You okay?" she asked, nudging his arm gently. Aaron smiled and gave her hand a squeeze. "Yeah, just thinking how peaceful it looks up here." Mia nodded, understanding. It felt like a different world, up above the clouds, a place where their worries could not follow. She turned back to her magazine, flipping through pictures of beaches, hoping they could finally have some time to simply breathe. The flight attendant, a tall woman in her 40s named Deborah, moved down the aisle. Her smile was wide, but lacked warmth, more rehearsed than real. Mia noticed the way her eyes seemed to dart over certain passengers, quick and dismissive. Aaron, absorbed in his thoughts, did not seem to notice. As Deborah passed their row, Aaron adjusted his seat, trying to get comfortable. He turned just as she passed by. "Excuse me," he began, intending to ask for a glass of water. Before he could finish, Deborah stopped, her smile vanishing. "Sir, you need to sit properly in your seat," she said sharply. Aaron blinked, caught off guard. "I was just adjusting." Deborah raised a hand as though to silence him. "The rules are there for a reason," she said, her tone bordering on dismissive. Mia straightened, placing a hand on Aaron's arm. "He was just getting comfortable," she said calmly, hoping to defuse the situation. Deborah's eyes narrowed slightly. Without another word, she turned and continued down the aisle. Aaron and Mia exchanged bewildered glances. "That was strange," Mia murmured. Aaron shrugged, though Mia could see the tension in his shoulders. "Maybe she's having a bad day." Mia nodded, but something about the interaction stayed with her. The air felt heavier, as though a thread had come loose in what was supposed to be a seamless journey. Minutes later, Deborah reached the back of the aisle and turned, her voice carrying over the soft hum of the cabin. "You people never seem to follow the rules, do you?" she muttered, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Mia froze. Her heart pounded in her chest as her mind replayed those words. "You people!" The phrase echoed in her ears, sharp and cutting. She felt her cheeks flush with a mix of embarrassment and anger. Aaron stiffened beside her, his jaw tight. The conversation around them quieted as other passengers picked up on the tension. Aaron leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I cannot believe she just said that," he whispered. Mia swallowed hard, trying to steady her breathing. She had dealt with moments of subtle discrimination before a rude comment from a stranger or a dismissive look at work. But this felt different. It was so public, so blatant. Aaron's hand tightened into a fist. "We should say something," he muttered. "This is not okay." Mia nodded but placed a hand over his. "We will," she said softly. "But let's be smart about it. We will not let this slide, but I do not want us to get thrown off this flight." Aaron took a deep breath, nodding. "You are right," he said, though his frustration was clear. He glanced out the window, his reflection staring back at him. It was supposed to be a peaceful trip. How had things changed so quickly? Mia reached for his hand and laced her fingers through his. The simple gesture grounded them both. "We will handle this," she whispered. Aaron nodded again. "Together," he agreed. A few minutes later, another flight attendant, a young woman with kind eyes, passed by. Her name tag read Jessica. Mia flagged her down, her voice calm but firm. "Excuse me, Jessica," Mia began. "We need to speak with someone in charge." Jessica hesitated, sensing the tension. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her tone cautious but concerned. Mia shook her head. "No, it is not," she said. "We need to report something." Jessica nodded. "I will get the supervisor for you," she said, walking toward the front of the plane. As they waited, Mia glanced around at the other passengers. Some offered sympathetic looks, while others stared awkwardly at their screens, trying to avoid involvement. Aaron stayed silent, staring ahead, his thoughts swirling. Mia could feel his frustration. She felt it too, the sting of being belittled, and the weight of wondering if speaking up would even make a difference. Moments later, a man in a crisp uniform approached. His name tag read, "Mark Flight Supervisor." His expression was serious but neutral as he stopped by their row. "I understand there has been an issue," Mark said. Mia took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "We need to tell you what happened." Mark listened as Mia recounted the interaction. Her voice wavered only slightly as she repeated Deborah's words. Aaron spoke next, his words measured but firm. "We felt humiliated," he said. "This was not just about a rule. It felt personal." Mark's expression shifted as he processed their words. His brow furrowed, and he nodded slowly. "I am very sorry you experienced this," he said. "I will speak with Deborah immediately and make sure this is handled." Mia nodded, though her heart still felt heavy. She wanted to believe him, but after years of hearing empty apologies, she could not be sure. As Mark walked away, Aaron exhaled slowly. "Do you think they will actually do something?" he asked. Mia squeezed his hand. "I do not know," she admitted. "But we did the right thing by speaking up." Aaron nodded, though the uncertainty remained. The hum of the plane's engines filled the silence between them. They had come on this flight hoping for peace, but it seemed they would have to fight for it instead. The plane continued its steady course, but for Aaron and Mia, the peace of the flight had been shattered. The soft murmur of passengers filled the cabin again, but the tension between them and the flight crew hung in the air. Aaron rested his forehead against the window, trying to steady his breathing. He was not the type to lose his temper easily, but the weight of what happened was pressing down on him. Mia sat straight, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, replaying the moment in her mind. A few minutes later, Mark, the flight supervisor, returned. He crouched slightly to meet their eyes and spoke in a hushed voice to avoid drawing more attention. "I have spoken to Deborah," he began. His expression was serious, but there was a flicker of discomfort in his eyes. "She has been removed from her duties for the remainder of this flight. We take this type of behavior very seriously." Aaron shifted, unsure whether to feel relieved or frustrated. "That is a start," he said slowly. but it does not really change what happened. Mia nodded, her voice quieter but firm. It was humiliating, she said. We should not have to wonder whether we will be treated fairly just because of who we are. Mark's jaw tightened. You are absolutely right, he said, his voice steady but solemn. I cannot change what happened, but I can promise you that we will investigate this when we land. Mia's eyes softened slightly at his sincerity. She wanted to believe that he meant every word. Thank you, she said. But please make sure this is not just another promise that gets buried. Mark met her gaze and gave a small nod. I will personally make sure this is followed through, he said. As he straightened and walked back down the aisle, Mia let out a long breath she did not realize she had been holding. Aaron reached for her hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze. You okay? He asked. Mia gave a small nod. I think so, she replied, though her heart still felt heavy. I wonder if it really matters to anyone but us. Aaron's expression hardened as he thought back to the people who had overheard Deborah's words. Most had sat in silence, pretending nothing had happened. I get it, he said, but we cannot let this go, Mia. If we stay quiet, people like her will think they can get away with it. Mia looked into Aaron's eyes and saw the same resolve she felt growing within herself. We will not stay quiet, she said. For a while they sat in silence, watching the soft glow of the sunset filtering through the windows. Mia felt Aaron's hand warm against hers, and the gesture reminded her that they were not alone in this. They were together, facing the challenge side by side. By the time the plane began its descent, the cabin had settled again, though some passengers still glanced curiously at Aaron and Mia. As the captain's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing their approach to the airport, Mia reached for her phone to check the time. Aaron glanced at her. What do you think will happen when we get off? He asked, his tone cautious. Mia hesitated. I am not sure, she admitted, but we will not leave until we make sure someone is really listening. Aaron nodded. Good, he said. We are stronger when we speak up. As the plane touched down with a gentle thud, the familiar noise of seat belts unbuckling and overhead bins opening filled the air. Passengers stood, stretching and gathering their belongings, eager to disembark. But for Mia and Aaron, the flight had been anything but ordinary. Mia's nerves buzzed with anticipation as they filed toward the exit. When they stepped into the bustling terminal, they spotted a small group of airline staff near the gate. At the front was Mark, standing tall with his hands clasped in front of him. Beside him, dressed in casual clothes, was Deborah. Gone was the crisp uniform and forced smile. Her shoulders were stiff, her face pale as she avoided making eye contact with anyone. Aaron's footsteps slowed when he saw her. She is here, he muttered, his voice low but sharp. Mia's eyes narrowed as she watched Deborah glance nervously around the terminal. Whatever confidence she had shown earlier had evaporated. Mia wondered if Deborah felt regret or just fear that she had been caught. Mark stepped forward, his expression somber but professional. Aaron, Mia, he greeted them with a nod. We have arranged a private room so we can discuss this further. Aaron and Mia exchanged a quick glance before following him through a side hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as they made their way to a small office near the gate. The room was plain, with white walls and a simple wooden table surrounded by chairs. Mia felt her pulse quicken as they sat down. She was not sure what to expect, but she knew one thing: they had come too far to back down now. Deborah hovered near the door, her arms crossed defensively. She still would not look at them, but Mia could see the tension in her stance. Mark closed the door and took a seat across from Aaron and Mia. I want to start by saying again that we are truly sorry for what happened on this flight, he began, his voice calm but direct. Deborah's behavior was unacceptable, and we are addressing it internally. But I also want to make sure that you have the chance to tell us what you need moving forward. Aaron leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. "We need more than an apology," he said. This was not just a bad interaction, it was a reminder that people in positions of power can still treat others like they do not belong. That has to change. Mia nodded, her voice quieter but no less determined. "If this happened to us, it has probably happened to others. You need to make sure that this kind of behavior is not allowed to continue." Mark listened, nodding slowly. "I understand," he said. "We are committed to making sure this incident is part of a larger change. That includes reviewing our training protocols and making sure all staff are held accountable." For the first time, Deborah spoke, though her voice was barely above a whisper. I did not mean for it to go that far," she said, her eyes still fixed on the floor. "I was frustrated, and I said something I should not have." Aaron stared at her, his expression unreadable. "Frustration does not justify what you said," he replied. "You chose those words." Deborah's face reddened, and she shifted uncomfortably. "I am sorry," she muttered, though it felt more like a reflex than genuine remorse. Mia's chest tightened, but she spoke calmly. "This is not just about saying sorry," she said. "It is about making sure people are treated with dignity, no matter who they are." Mark's gaze softened, but his voice remained firm. "You are right," he said. "We will be conducting a full investigation, and you will receive updates every step of the way." Aaron and Mia exchanged a glance. It was not everything they wanted, but it was a step. For now, they had spoken their truth, and they were determined to make sure it was heard. As they stood to leave, Mia felt a weight lift from her chest, though the road ahead was still uncertain. What mattered was that they had not stayed silent, and that was only the beginning. The door to the small office closed behind them, with a soft click, as Aaron and Mia stepped back into the crowded terminal. The hum of conversations, flight announcements, and the rolling of suitcase wheels felt distant, like background noise in a dream. Aaron took a deep breath, running a hand over his face. Mia walked quietly beside him, her arms crossed over her chest. "That was exhausting," Aaron muttered, breaking the silence. Mia nodded. "It was." She glanced at him, her dark eyes reflecting both anger and fatigue. "But I am glad we said what we needed to say." Aaron stopped walking and turned to face her. "Do you really think they will follow through?" His voice was low, his frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "We have heard promises like that before, Mia." Mia placed a hand on his arm, her touch gentle but grounding. "I do not know," she admitted, "but at least now they know we will not just sit back and take it." Aaron exhaled slowly, his shoulders relaxing a little. "You are right," he said. "We cannot let ourselves believe that this is the end of it, though. We need to follow up." Mia gave a small nod. "We will," she promised. "But for now, let us try to focus on getting to the hotel. We need some space to breathe." Aaron glanced at their surroundings, the bustling crowds, the fluorescent lights, the chatter of families and business travelers, and realized how tightly wound he had become. "Yeah," he agreed, grabbing their suitcase handle. "Let's go." The taxi ride to their hotel was quiet. The city outside the window blurred by as Aaron and Mia sat in silence. Aaron stared out at the skyline, the towering buildings and shimmering lights, but his thoughts were elsewhere. Mia sat with her hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing in particular. She could feel Aaron's emotions as if they were her own. The hurt, the helplessness, the weight of wondering if their words had made any difference at all. She thought back to Deborah's face, the way she had stood by the door, unsure, defensive. Mia was not sure if Deborah's apology had been sincere, but that was not what mattered most. What mattered was whether the system that allowed someone like Deborah to act that way would finally change. When they reached the hotel, the bellhop greeted them warmly and carried their bags inside. The quiet kindness was a stark contrast to what they had experienced on the flight. As they stepped into their room, Mia felt the weight of the day settle fully onto her shoulders. The room was beautiful, soft white bedding, large windows with a view of the beach, and the distant sound of waves lapping against the shore. But even with the beauty around them, the tension still lingered. Aaron sat on the edge of the bed and let out a heavy sigh. Mia sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. "What are you thinking?" she asked softly. Aaron hesitated. "I keep wondering if we did enough," he admitted, "or if they will just sweep it under the rug once we are out of sight." Mia straightened and turned to face him. "We cannot control what they do next," she said gently. "But we can control what we do. We can follow up. We can make sure they know we are not going away." Aaron's gaze softened as he listened to her. Mia had always had that quiet strength, the ability to find calm, even in the storm. "You always know how to make me see things clearer," he said with a faint smile. Mia smiled back, though it was small and tired. "We make each other stronger," she replied. "That is why we will get through this." Aaron nodded, the tight knot in his chest loosening just a bit. He took her hand and squeezed it. "Thank you," he said quietly. Mia leaned her head against his shoulder again, and for a few moments they sat together in the stillness, letting the sound of the waves outside replace their racing thoughts. The next morning, Mia woke to the soft glow of sunlight streaming through the curtains. She blinked sleepily and glanced over at Aaron, who was already awake and scrolling through his phone. "Good morning," she murmured, stretching her arms. Aaron looked up and gave her a half-smile. "Morning," he replied. "I just checked my email. Nothing from the airline yet." Mia rubbed her eyes and sat up. "I was not expecting them to respond that quickly," she said. "But we should follow up soon." Aaron nodded. "Yeah," he said. "I have been thinking, maybe we should not just wait for them to get back to us. Maybe we need to document what happened, write everything down while it is still fresh." Mia's eyes brightened at the idea. "That is smart," she said. "If we have a record, it will be harder for them to dismiss us." Aaron got out of bed and grabbed a notebook from his bag. "Let's do it now," he said, sitting down at the small desk in the corner of the room. Mia joined him, and together they began recounting everything that had happened from the moment they boarded the flight to the conversation in the office. As they wrote, Mia felt a strange sense of relief. Putting it into words made it feel more real, like their story was something solid, something that could not be erased. Later that afternoon, after a quiet walk along the beach, Mia's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw an email notification from the airline's corporate office. Her pulse quickened as she opened it, Aaron peering over her shoulder. The email was formal but direct. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Walker, we acknowledge the report you filed regarding the incident on your recent flight. We want to assure you that your complaint is being taken seriously, and we are conducting a thorough investigation. We understand the distress caused and will update you as soon as possible regarding the outcome of this matter." The message ended with a name and a promise to follow up. Aaron leaned back, exhaling slowly. "It is something," he said. "At least they are acknowledging it." Mia nodded, though her expression was still cautious. "It is a start," she said. "But we need more than words. We need action." Aaron closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound of the ocean breeze outside fill the silence. "We will not let them forget," he said finally. "We have come this far, Mia. We are not stopping now." Mia reached for his hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. "No," she agreed. "We are not." The email was just the beginning, but it was enough to remind them that their voices had been heard, and no matter how long it took, they were determined to make sure that what happened on that flight would not be forgotten or ignored. The day drifted by in slow, quiet moments. Aaron and Mia wandered the beach near their hotel, letting the salty air and warm sun try to ease the weight in their hearts. The ocean was calm, and the sound of the waves felt like a song meant to soothe, but their minds remained restless. As the afternoon sun began to dip toward the horizon, Aaron reached down to pick up a smooth shell from the wet sand and handed it to Mia. She ran her thumb over its polished surface, her expression soft but distant. "Do you ever feel like we are holding our breath?" she asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Aaron tilted his head, surprised by the question. "What do you mean?" Mia exhaled slowly, as if to show him. "Like we are waiting for something, but we do not know when or if it will come." Aaron nodded. "Yeah," he said after a pause. "I feel it too. It is like everything is in limbo. We spoke up, we did everything right, and now we are just waiting to see if they will actually do anything." Mia slipped the shell into her pocket. "I keep thinking about all the times we stayed silent before, the times we convinced ourselves that speaking up would not change anything." Aaron looked at her, the orange glow of the sunset reflecting in his eyes. "This time is different," he said firmly. "We did not stay quiet. No matter what happens, we did the right thing." Mia gave a small, sad smile. "I know. I want this to mean something, Aaron. I want to believe that someone out there is actually listening." Aaron reached for her hand and squeezed it. "They will listen. We will make them listen if we have to." The next morning, after breakfast in their hotel room, Aaron opened his laptop and began researching while Mia sipped her coffee at the small dining table. "What are you looking at?" Mia asked. "Other cases," Aaron said without looking up. His fingers tapped steadily across the keys. "I want to see how other people handled things like this." Mia leaned forward, curious. "And?" Aaron frowned as he read through a legal article. "Some people got results, but a lot of them didn't. Companies make promises, hold a meeting or two, but then things go back to normal. The people who spoke up are left feeling like nothing really changed." Mia stared into her mug, her mind turning over his words. "That cannot be us," she said quietly. Aaron nodded in agreement. "It won't be." He closed the laptop and looked at her. "We need to follow up soon. We need to show them we are not letting this go." Mia's face grew more determined. "We can write a formal statement," she suggested. "Summarize everything again, what happened, what we need from them, and what changes we want to see." Aaron grabbed a notebook and pen from his bag. "Good idea. Let's make it clear that we are serious." That afternoon, they drafted the letter together, carefully choosing their words. They outlined every detail: Deborah's dismissive attitude, her cruel comment, and the way the situation had been handled in the office. They highlighted their frustration with how easily incidents like this could be forgotten once people returned to their routines. When they finished, Mia read the draft aloud. Her voice was calm, but carried an edge of quiet strength. "We expect more than a temporary solution," she read. "We expect real accountability and transparency, not just for us, but for every passenger who might face a similar situation." Aaron leaned back in his chair, impressed by her resolve. "That is perfect," he said. Mia nodded but felt a pang of uncertainty. "It sounds good," she said. "But will they care enough to act?" Aaron reached across the table and took her hand. "They will care," he said, "because we are not letting them off the hook." The next day, they sent the letter to the airline's corporate office, attaching their initial complaint and asking for a timeline on the investigation. Mia clicked send and sat back, watching the email disappear into the void of cyberspace. She felt both hopeful and powerless, all at once. Aaron crossed the room to stand beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We did everything we could," he said. Mia nodded, but felt the familiar unease creep back in. "I know," she said softly, "but I still feel like we are waiting for something we cannot control." Aaron sat beside her, his voice steady. "Then we control what we can," he said. "We stay vocal. We make sure our story is not forgotten." By the end of the day, Mia's inbox remained empty. She refreshed her phone again, though she knew it was pointless. "Still nothing," she said, frustration creeping into her voice. Aaron frowned, but did not seem surprised. "It has not even been a full day," he reminded her. Mia sighed. I want to believe they will do the right thing." Aaron leaned against the window, staring out at the ocean waves. "Me too," he murmured. Mia walked over to him and rested her head against his shoulder. "I am glad we are doing this together," she said. Aaron wrapped an arm around her and nodded. "I am too," he replied. The setting sun cast a warm glow over the room, filling it with a quiet peace. For the first time that day, Mia felt a flicker of hope, a small but steady reminder that they had not backed down. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The following morning, a soft chime woke Mia. She blinked in the early light and reached for her phone. When she saw the email notification on the screen, her heart skipped a beat. "Aaron," she whispered, sitting up and nudging his arm. Aaron rubbed his eyes and sat up groggily. "What is it?" Mia held up the phone. "They sent an update." Aaron's sleepiness vanished. He moved closer as Mia opened the message. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Walker, we acknowledge your follow-up and sincerely apologize for the delay in our response. We assure you that our investigation is ongoing, and we will provide further details soon. Additionally, as part of our initial response, we have taken steps to temporarily reassign the employee in question." The email ended with a note that a more comprehensive report would follow. Aaron leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "They are stalling," he said, his frustration clear. Mia frowned, but forced herself to stay calm. "Maybe," she agreed, "but at least they know we are paying attention." Aaron nodded slowly. "Yeah, they do," he said. "Now we make sure they know we are not going anywhere." Mia's heart steadied as she put the phone down. They had pushed forward, and though the fight was far from over, they had taken the first steps toward real accountability. She glanced at Aaron, their resolve mirrored in each other's eyes. "We will not let this go," she whispered. Aaron reached for her hand, a small but powerful gesture of solidarity. "No, we won't." The ocean waves continued their steady rhythm outside, a reminder that even the strongest currents began with a single ripple. Together, they had set that ripple in motion, and they would see it through. The late morning sunlight streamed through the hotel room window as Aaron and Mia sat at the small dining table, their untouched breakfast plates growing cold. The email from the airline played over and over in their minds. The words "temporary reassignment" felt like a weak bandage over a deep wound. Aaron drummed his fingers against the table, his jaw set in frustration. Mia stared at her coffee, the dark liquid swirling as she gently stirred it. "They are avoiding responsibility," she said quietly. Aaron nodded. "Yeah, reassigning her is not accountability. It is just moving her out of sight." Mia leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "I cannot believe they think that is enough. Do they really think we are going to let this slide?" Aaron exhaled slowly and shook his head. "No," he said, "we are not." He reached for his phone. "It is time we take this to the next level." Mia frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Aaron met her gaze, his eyes steady. "We are not the only ones who have gone through something like this," he said. "We need to find out if others have had similar experiences and if they are willing to speak up, too." Mia's expression shifted, her frustration slowly giving way to something else, determination. "That is actually a good idea," she said. "If we can show this is not an isolated incident, they cannot dismiss us so easily." Aaron nodded. "Exactly." He pulled his laptop over and began typing. Mia moved to sit beside him, watching as he opened a social media page. He began drafting a post. "My wife and I recently experienced an incident of discrimination on a flight. We spoke up, and while the airline acknowledged the issue, we feel like they are trying to brush it under the rug. If you have faced something similar, please share your story. It is time we make our voices heard." Mia read it aloud as Aaron typed. "That feels honest," she said, "and powerful." Aaron hesitated before hitting post. "Do you think people will actually respond?" Mia placed her hand over his. "I do," she said firmly. "People are tired of being silenced." Aaron took a deep breath and clicked post. Within seconds, the message was live. Mia watched as the screen refreshed and the first few likes appeared. "Now we wait," Aaron said, though his voice held an edge of anxiety. Mia reached for his hand again, lacing her fingers through his. "No matter what happens," she said, "we are doing the right thing." By mid-afternoon, their phones were buzzing with notifications. Messages poured in, some from friends offering support, others from strangers sharing their own stories. Mia's heart ached as she read them. One message read, "I know exactly how you feel. I was told I did not belong in first class because I looked out of place." It was humiliating. Another read, "Thank you for speaking out. I have stayed quiet for too long." Aaron ran a hand through his hair, overwhelmed but determined. This is bigger than us," he said quietly. Mia nodded, scrolling through the growing list of responses. "People have been through so much," she whispered. "We have to do something." Aaron sat back, his mind racing. "We need to make sure the airline knows that this is not just about one flight attendant or one bad day. It is about a system that lets this happen." Mia's eyes narrowed with purpose. "We need to demand a meeting with someone higher up. No more emails, no more vague responses. Face to face." Aaron's gaze sharpened. "You are right," he said. "We need to look them in the eye and make sure they understand that this is not going away." The next morning, after carefully drafting a new email to the airline's corporate office, Mia pressed send. The message was direct. "We have spoken with other passengers who have experienced similar incidents. This is not an isolated case. We are requesting an in-person meeting to discuss how you plan to address not only our experience, but the broader issue of discrimination within your airline. We are committed to ensuring meaningful change." Aaron watched her send it, a small smile forming on his face. "I love how fearless you are," he said. Mia glanced at him, a flicker of warmth breaking through her frustration. "I am fearless because I have you," she said. Aaron chuckled and pulled her into a brief hug. "We are a good team," he murmured. Later that afternoon, Mia's phone chimed again. She opened the email and scanned the message quickly before reading it aloud. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Walker, we have received your request and understand your concerns. Our senior customer relations manager is available to meet with you at your earliest convenience. Please provide your availability for a meeting at our main office." Aaron raised an eyebrow. "They agreed?" Mia nodded, though her expression was cautious. "It sounds promising, but let us see how serious they really are." Aaron leaned forward. "This is our chance, Mia. If they are willing to meet, we need to make sure they walk away knowing that we will not stop until real changes are made." Mia smiled, though it was small and tired. "We are ready," she said. "We have everything we need: our story, the voices of others, and the truth." Aaron nodded. "Then let's make this count." A few days later, Aaron and Mia stood outside the airline's corporate office, their nerves buzzing beneath the surface. The sleek glass building loomed above them, reflecting the city skyline. Aaron adjusted the strap of his bag, which carried their notes and printouts of the messages they had received. Mia took a slow, steadying breath and gave Aaron's hand a reassuring squeeze. "We are not just here for us," she said. "We are here for everyone who has been silenced." Aaron nodded, feeling a familiar warmth in her words. "Let's do this," he said. They stepped through the revolving doors and into the brightly lit lobby. A receptionist greeted them, and directed them to the conference room on the 15th floor. As they rode the elevator up, Aaron felt the weight of their journey settle on his shoulders. When the doors opened, a man in a tailored suit greeted them with a professional but kind smile. "Mr. and Mrs. Walker," he said, "I am David Taylor, the Senior Customer Relations Manager. Thank you for coming." Aaron shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for meeting with us," he said. David motioned for them to enter the conference room. The space was large but simple, neutral-toned walls, a long wooden table, and chairs lined neatly around it. Mia sat down and placed their documents on the table. "We are here because this is bigger than one flight," she began, her voice steady. "We need to know what you are going to do, not just to address what happened to us, but to make sure this never happens again." David nodded, his expression serious. "I understand," he said. "We are here to listen and to make things right." Aaron and Mia exchanged a quick glance. For the first time in days, a small spark of hope began to glow in their hearts. But they both knew that listening was only the first step. The real work was just beginning. The conference room felt unnaturally quiet, as though the air itself was holding its breath. Aaron and Mia sat across from David Taylor, their notes neatly stacked between them. The weight of the moment pressed down on their shoulders, but neither of them showed it. They had come too far to back down now. David folded his hands on the table, his eyes earnest. "Before we begin, I want to sincerely apologize for what you both experienced. No passenger should ever feel disrespected or unsafe on one of our flights." Mia met his gaze evenly. "We appreciate the apology, but words are not enough," she said, her voice steady but firm. "We are here because this was not just one bad interaction. It was part of a larger problem, and you have to recognize that if you want to fix it." David nodded slowly. "You are right. We do recognize that. The first step is making sure we fully understand what happened." He gestured toward the notes in front of Mia. "Would you mind walking me through everything? I want to hear it directly from you." Mia hesitated for a moment, then opened her notebook. She took a deep breath and began. "It started when the flight attendant, Deborah, came down the aisle. At first she seemed polite, but there was something off. Then, when Aaron adjusted his seat, she snapped at him like he was a child." Aaron leaned forward, his voice calm but laced with frustration. "She did not just tell me to sit properly, she dismissed me like I was doing something wrong when I was not." Mia continued, her tone growing sharper as she recounted the moment that still haunted her. "Then, when Aaron adjusted his seat, she snapped at him like he was a child." Aaron leaned forward, his voice calm but laced with frustration. "She did not just tell me to sit properly, she dismissed me like I was doing something wrong when I was not." Mia continued, her tone growing sharper as and then, at the end of the aisle, she said it loud enough for everyone to hear, "You people never follow the rules." David's face darkened. "I cannot imagine how humiliating that must have been," he said. "I am sorry." Aaron's jaw tightened. It was not just humiliating, it was dehumanizing. And the worst part? Everyone heard it, and most of them stayed quiet. "We felt alone." Mia nodded, her eyes glistening but resolute. "We were not looking for a fight. We just wanted to feel like we belonged there like any other passenger." David sat back, silent for a moment, as he processed their words. Finally, he spoke. "What happened to you is unacceptable. And you are right. This is not just about one incident. It is about creating an environment where this kind of behavior is not tolerated in the first place." Mia's shoulders eased slightly, but she was still guarded. "What are you actually going to do about it?" she asked. "What steps are you taking to make sure this does not happen again?" David reached for a folder on the table and slid it toward them. "We have started by conducting a formal review of Deborah's employment history," he said. "We have already reassigned her pending the results of the investigation, but that is not enough. We are implementing mandatory anti-bias training for all flight attendants Not just a one-time workshop, but ongoing training. Aaron flipped through the folder, his brow furrowed. "What does the training cover?" he asked. David leaned forward. "It covers how to recognize unconscious bias, how to de-escalate situations without disrespecting passengers, and how to foster an inclusive environment. We are also updating our incident reporting system to make it easier for passengers to report concerns without fear of being ignored." Mia glanced at Aaron, her heart softening slightly. She could see that David was taking this seriously, but the fear of empty promises still lingered. "What happens to Deborah?" she asked carefully. David's expression grew somber. "That will depend on the outcome of the investigation," he said. "But I can assure you, if the findings confirm what you have described, there will be real consequences. This is not something we will sweep under the rug." Aaron closed the folder and folded his arms across his chest. "It is a good start," he said. "But we need more than policies on paper. We need transparency. We need to know that these changes are actually being implemented and that people are held accountable." David nodded again. "You are absolutely right. That is why I want you to stay involved. If you are willing, I would like to keep you updated throughout the entire process and invite you to provide feedback on the training program as it develops." Mia blinked in surprise. "You want us to be part of the process?" she asked. "Yes," David said firmly, "because your perspective is invaluable. You have every right to hold us accountable, and I believe that having your input will make our efforts stronger." Aaron and Mia exchanged a glance. It was not the outcome they had expected, but it was a chance to turn their pain into something meaningful. After the meeting, Aaron and Mia stepped outside into the bright afternoon sunlight. The noise of the city buzzed around them, but they were wrapped in a quiet moment of reflection. "That was unexpected," Aaron said, adjusting the strap of his bag. Mia nodded, still processing everything. "I did not think they would ask us to be involved," she admitted. "But it feels like an opportunity to make a real difference." Aaron gave a small smile. "I think so too. And you were incredible in there, Mia." Mia laughed softly. "So were you," she said. "We make a good team, huh?" Aaron reached for her hand. "The best." They began walking back toward their hotel, their steps lighter than before. There was still a long road ahead, but for the first time, they felt like they were moving forward, not just for themselves, but for everyone who had ever felt silenced. That night, Mia sat cross-legged on the bed, scrolling through her phone. She noticed that their post about the incident had gained even more traction. Dozens of new messages had come in, people sharing their stories, their support, and their hope. Aaron sat beside her, reading some of the messages over her shoulder. One comment caught his attention. "Your story gave me the courage to speak up about what happened to me. Thank you." Aaron's heart swelled with a mix of pride and humility. "This is why we did this," he said softly. Mia nodded, her eyes bright with emotion. "We wanted to be heard, and now we are helping others find their voices too." Aaron reached over and squeezed her hand. "We are not done yet," he said. Mia's smile was small but steady. "No," she agreed, "but we are just getting started." They both knew the fight for change would not be easy, but as they sat together, the city lights twinkling outside their window, they felt a renewed sense of purpose. Kindness, resilience, and hope, they had built their journey on those foundations, and now they were determined to make sure those values could ripple outward, touching lives far beyond their own. For the first time in days, they felt not just hopeful, but empowered. The next morning, Aaron and Mia sat on the hotel balcony, their breakfasts untouched on the small table between them. The sound of waves crashing against the shore filled the air, but their thoughts were elsewhere. Aaron scrolled through his phone, checking for updates, while Mia watched a group of seagulls swoop over the water. Her phone vibrated suddenly, making her jump. She picked it up and saw an email notification from the airline. "It is from David," she said, her voice steady but nervous. Erin leaned closer as she opened the message. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Walker, after our meeting, I wanted to reach out personally. We have reviewed our findings and would like to extend an official apology, both in writing and in person. We take full responsibility for the incident you experienced and acknowledge that no passenger should ever face what you went through. Additionally, I want to inform you that we have made significant progress in updating our training program and improving our internal reporting systems. We would like to offer you the opportunity to speak at our upcoming employee summit to share your story and help guide meaningful change within our company." Erin's eyes widened. "They want us to speak at their summit?" Mia blinked, stunned. "I did not expect that." She scrolled further down the email. "They are offering a public apology, Erin." Erin sat back, rubbing his jaw. "This is huge." He paused, his mind racing. "But are we ready to share everything in front of their entire team?" Mia looked out over the waves, her expression thoughtful. "We have already come this far," she said quietly. "We spoke up when it was hard. We stayed steady when we were ignored. Maybe sharing our story will make the change real for them." Erin studied her face, the quiet strength, the calm resolve that always amazed him. He nodded slowly. "If this can stop someone else from going through what we did, I am in." A week later, Erin and Mia found themselves standing in the lobby of a sleek conference center. The walls were made of glass, and sunlight streamed in, making everything feel open and bright. But despite the beautiful surroundings, Mia felt the familiar weight of nerves pressing on her chest. Erin sensed it and reached for her hand. "We have got this," he said softly. "Together." Mia smiled, though her stomach still fluttered with uncertainty. "Together," she echoed. David greeted them near the entrance, dressed in a crisp navy suit. "Thank you for coming," he said, shaking their hands warmly. "It means a lot to have you here." Erin nodded. "It means a lot that you invited us," he replied. "But we hope this is more than just words." David's expression was serious but sincere. "It is, I promise you." He led them down a wide hallway and into the main conference room. Rows of chairs faced a stage where a podium stood with the airline's logo displayed prominently. The room buzzed with the low hum of employees taking their seats, flight attendants, managers, and corporate staff from across the company. Mia's heart thudded in her chest as she took in the scene. She felt small in the vast room, but Erin's steady presence beside her reminded her why they were here. David walked to the podium and adjusted the microphone. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice calm and clear. "Today's meeting is not like the others. Today we are here to talk about accountability, change, and how we can do better not just as an airline, but as people." The room grew silent as David continued. "A few weeks ago, 2 of our passengers experienced an incident on one of our flights that should never have happened. I want to begin by acknowledging our failure and by apologizing, on behalf of the company, for the pain that incident caused." He turned toward Erin and Mia and nodded. "Erin and Mia Walker are here today to share their story, not to place blame, but to remind us why change is necessary. Please give them your full attention and respect." A polite wave of applause spread through the room as Erin and Mia stepped up to the podium. Mia gripped the sides of the stand to steady herself as she adjusted the microphone. She took a deep breath, letting the stillness settle around her before she spoke. "My husband and I did not plan to be here," she began, her voice soft but steady. "We booked a flight because we wanted to celebrate our anniversary. We just wanted to feel normal, to have a peaceful trip after a difficult year." She paused, scanning the faces in the room. Some employees looked solemn, others uncomfortable. But that peace was taken from us. When the flight attendant insulted us in front of everyone, it was more than just a comment. It was a reminder that, for people like us, There are places where we are still made to feel like we do not belong. Aaron stepped forward, his voice steady, but weighted with emotion. We were made to feel small, he said, but we decided not to stay small. We decided to speak up not just for ourselves, but for anyone who has ever felt invisible. Mia nodded. We are not here to be angry or to call anyone out by name. We are here because silence only makes things worse. Change starts with speaking up and being willing to listen, even when it is uncomfortable. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the overhead lights. Aaron let the quiet settle before continuing. We want to thank David and the leadership team for taking our concerns seriously. But this is just the beginning. Change is not a policy. It is how you treat people, every day. Mia looked directly into the crowd. We hope that after today, you will remember that every passenger who boards your plane is someone who deserves respect, kindness, and dignity. You have the power to make people feel welcome or to make them feel like they do not belong. The final words lingered in the air before the room erupted in applause. It was not polite or perfunctory. It was real. Several employees stood, clapping with genuine respect. Mia felt the tension in her chest release as she stepped away from the podium. Aaron gave her a proud smile, and David shook their hands as they returned to their seats. After the summit, several employees approached them. One flight attendant, a young woman with curly hair and kind eyes, spoke with a slight tremor in her voice. "Thank you for sharing that," she said. It makes me realize how important our actions are. I want to do better." Mia felt her throat tighten, but managed a soft smile. "Thank you for listening," she said. Another man, an older supervisor, added, "I have worked in this industry for 20 years, and I have never seen a meeting like this. What you two did today, it mattered." Aaron and Mia exchanged a quiet glance. This was what they had hoped for, not just an apology, but a shift, a ripple that could grow into real change. As they stepped outside into the afternoon sun, Aaron took a deep breath. "That was intense," he said. Mia nodded, her eyes shining with a mix of exhaustion and pride. "But worth it," she said. Aaron wrapped an arm around her shoulders as they walked down the steps. "We turned something painful into something powerful," he said. "That is resilience." Mia smiled as the breeze brushed against her skin. "And hope," she added softly. "It is how we move forward." They knew their journey was not over, but as they walked together, they felt lighter, like they had begun to shift the current of a much larger river. The airport was quieter than usual when Aaron and Mia returned home. The hum of luggage wheels and distant flight announcements echoed faintly as they walked side by side, their steps slow but steady. Their bags felt heavier than they should have. Though Aaron knew it had nothing to do with their weight, Mia let out a slow breath as they exited the terminal and stepped into the cool evening air. The sun was setting, painting the sky with soft streaks of orange and pink. For a moment, they stood still, letting the fresh breeze wash over them. "It feels different now," Mia murmured, looking out at the cars pulling up to the curb. Aaron glanced at her. "What does?" Mia shrugged, her hands stuffed into her jacket pockets. "Coming home. I feel like we left as one version of ourselves and came back as another." Aaron nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I get that. It is like we went through something that changed us, and there is no going back to how things were before." Mia gave him a small, knowing smile. "But maybe that is not such a bad thing." The drive home was peaceful. The familiar streets of their neighborhood felt comforting after everything they had been through. When they pulled into the driveway, Aaron turned off the engine and sat for a moment, staring at their small, cozy house. Mia reached for his hand. "We did it," she said softly. Aaron squeezed her hand. "Yeah," he replied. "We really did." They carried their bags inside and were greeted by the soft hum of their quiet home. The living room was just as they had left it, pillows neatly arranged on the couch, a half-read novel resting on the coffee table, and a vase of wilted flowers that had not survived their absence. Mia smiled as she set her suitcase down. "It is good to be home." Aaron nodded, but his gaze lingered on the room. "It feels smaller somehow," he said. Mia walked over and wrapped her arms around him. "Maybe that is because we have grown," she said. Aaron let out a small laugh, his tension easing. "You always know the right thing to say." The next morning, Mia woke to the sound of birds chirping outside the window. The sunlight poured in, soft and golden, and for the first time in what felt like weeks, she felt truly rested. She stretched and glanced over at Aaron, who was still sound asleep. His breathing was slow and even, his face relaxed. She reached for her phone, almost out of habit, and was surprised to see several new notifications. The post they had shared about their story was still spreading, and new comments had come in overnight. One message caught her eye. "I saw your speech at the summit. Thank you for reminding us that our voices matter. You have inspired so many of us." Mia felt a lump form in her throat as she read it. She placed her phone on the nightstand and sat quietly for a moment, letting the words sink in. When Aaron stirred and opened his eyes, she smiled at him. "Morning," she said. Aaron rubbed his face and sat up. "Morning, everything okay?" Mia nodded. "Yeah, I read a message from someone who saw the summit. They said we inspired them." Aaron's brow furrowed slightly, then softened as he smiled. "Wow," he said. "That is incredible." Mia's eyes brightened. "It is, isn't it?" She took his hand. "I know we have been carrying a lot, but moments like that remind me why we did it. Why it was worth it." Aaron squeezed her hand. "We are not just telling our story anymore," he said. "We are helping others find their voices too." Later that afternoon, Mia sat at her desk with her laptop open. She felt a pull to do something more, something lasting. She began typing, the words flowing naturally. "Hi friends, thank you all for your support. We are so grateful for the messages you have sent and the stories you have shared. Your voices deserve to be heard, and your experiences matter. Because of this, Aaron and I have decided to start working on a community platform, a place where people can safely share their stories and hold organizations accountable in a way that leads to real change." She paused for a moment, staring at the screen. Her heart fluttered with both nerves and excitement. Aaron walked in, holding 2 mugs of tea. "What are you working on?" he asked, setting one mug in front of her. Mia smiled as she turned the screen toward him. "Read it." Aaron read her message carefully, his face softening with admiration. "You want to create a space where people can speak out and feel supported?" Mia nodded. "Yeah, I have been thinking about it since we came back. We did not have a place like that when this all started, but we can create one for others." Aaron took a sip of his tea and let the warmth settle in his chest. "I love it," he said. "Let's do it." Over the next few days, Aaron and Mia dove into their work with renewed purpose. They drafted ideas for the platform, contacted friends who had experience in web design, and reached out to the civil rights organizations that had supported them throughout their journey. The outpouring of support was overwhelming. Messages flooded in from people offering their skills, sharing their stories, and thanking Aaron and Mia for acting. One afternoon, as they sat together in the living room, Mia's phone buzzed with a video message request. She glanced at the name and smiled. It was David from the airline. She accepted the call, and David's face appeared on the screen. "Hi, Mia." "Hi, Aaron," he said warmly. "I just wanted to check in and let you know that your speech at the summit had an even bigger impact than we anticipated. The feedback from our employees has been incredible." Aaron leaned forward. "That is good to hear," he said. David's expression grew more serious. "We have also finalized the investigation. As a result, we are making long-term changes to how we handle customer concerns. And I wanted you to hear it from me. Deborah will not be returning to any role involving direct passenger interaction. Mia exhaled slowly, her shoulders finally relaxing. "Thank you for telling us," she said. David nodded. "We would not have gotten this far without you both. And for what it is worth, you reminded us that this work, real change, is possible." When the call ended, Aaron and Mia sat in silence for a moment. "We did it," Mia whispered. Aaron smiled softly. "We really did." But as they sat there, they both knew this was not the end. Their new platform was taking shape, and there were still voices waiting to be heard. Aaron reached for Mia's hand. "Ready for the next chapter?" Mia's smile widened as she laced her fingers with his. "I am more than ready." Their home felt warmer now, filled with the quiet hum of hope. They had turned a moment of pain into something powerful, proof that kindness, resilience, and a refusal to stay silent could change the world. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Aaron and Mia's living room transformed into a makeshift workspace. Their dining table was covered with notebooks, laptops, and papers, scribbled with ideas and plans for the platform they were building. The hum of brainstorming sessions and the clink of coffee mugs filled the house, turning it into the beating heart of something bigger than they had ever imagined. Mia sat cross-legged on the couch, her laptop balanced on her knees. "Okay," she began, adjusting her glasses. "I think the homepage should be simple, but powerful, something that immediately makes people feel safe sharing their stories." Aaron, sitting at the other end of the couch, nodded thoughtfully. "Right. No complicated forms or jargon. It has to feel welcoming, like they're being invited to have a conversation." Mia's fingers flew over the keyboard as she typed out their thoughts. "Exactly. And we need a section that offers resources, legal contacts, support groups, anything that could help someone who feels lost." Aaron smiled at her, admiration lighting his eyes. "You are amazing. You know that?" Mia laughed softly, but didn't stop typing. "I just want to make sure no one feels alone the way we did." Aaron reached over and squeezed her hand. "We're doing this, Mia. We're building something real." A week later, they held their first virtual meeting with volunteers who had reached out, eager to help. The screen filled with faces, some strangers, some familiar. A young woman named Kayla, who worked as a web designer, smiled as she introduced herself. "I've been following your journey since you posted about the flight," she said. "It inspired me to get involved. I'd love to help with the technical side of things." Next was Carlos, a civil rights lawyer who had seen their story in the news. "I handle cases of workplace discrimination," he explained. "What you're doing is important. I can help with legal guidance and make sure your platform is secure and compliant." Aaron exchanged a look with Mia. The pieces were coming together in ways they hadn't expected. This wasn't just a project, it was a movement. By the end of the month, the platform named Your Voice, Our Strength was nearly ready for launch. It was simple, intuitive, and filled with tools for storytelling, reporting, and connection. Users could choose to share their experiences anonymously or publicly. There were also options to request advice or connect with advocates who could guide them through the process of seeking justice. Mia stared at the screen, her heart swelling with pride as she scrolled through the pages they had built. "I can't believe we're here," she said softly. Aaron leaned over her shoulder, his face reflected in the glow of the monitor. "It's everything we hoped it would be," he said. Mia nodded, but a familiar wave of doubt bubbled beneath her excitement. "What if no one uses it?" she asked quietly. Aaron rested a hand on her shoulder. "They will," he said. "People want to be heard. They just need to know there's a place where their voices matter." Mia let out a slow breath, nodding as she steadied herself. "You're right." The launch day arrived, and Aaron and Mia sat side by side at their dining table, their laptops open. They clicked publish, And in an instant, your voice, our strength, was live. For a moment, there was silence. Then Mia's phone buzzed, then again, and again. Notifications poured in, users registering, stories being shared, comments of support flooding their inbox. Aaron blinked at the screen, stunned. "It's happening," he whispered. Mia covered her mouth with one hand, tears brimming in her eyes. "People are really here," she said, her voice trembling. One post caught her eye. "I've never felt safe sharing my story before, but this feels different. Thank you for creating this space." Mia wiped her eyes and smiled. "This is why we did it," she said. Aaron leaned closer, resting his forehead against hers. "We're making a difference," he murmured. The days that followed felt like a dream. The platform gained momentum quickly as more people discovered it. Stories poured in from all over, people sharing their experiences at work, in stores, at schools, and in public spaces. Each story was unique, but they all carried a similar weight: the desire to be seen, heard, and treated with respect. Aaron and Mia worked tirelessly to moderate the posts and respond to messages. They took turns answering questions and connecting users to the resources they needed. But as their work grew, so did the attention. One morning, Mia's phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello?" A warm voice greeted her. "Hi, Mia. This is Jennifer from Morning Light News. We've been following your platform's incredible rise, and we'd love to feature your story in an upcoming segment." Mia's eyes widened. "Oh, wow," she stammered. "That's unexpected." Jennifer laughed softly. "I know it's a lot, but your work is resonating with people. It's making waves in ways you might not even realize." Mia glanced at Aaron, who raised a curious eyebrow. "We'd be honored," she said after a moment. When the call ended, Mia set the phone down slowly. "A news station wants to feature us," she said, still processing it. Aaron's eyes lit up. "Seriously?" Mia nodded. "They said what we're doing is making waves." Aaron leaned back in his chair, a slow grin spreading across his face. "I guess we really are." A week later, the news segment aired. Aaron and Mia watched from their living room, their hands intertwined. The reporter spoke passionately about the platform, showing clips of user testimonials and highlighting the impact Aaron and Mia had made. As the segment ended, Aaron turned to Mia, his eyes shining. "This is bigger than us now," he said. Mia nodded, her heart full. "It is, but it started with us, and that's something I'll never forget." Aaron pulled her into a hug, resting his chin on her head. "We turned something painful into something powerful," he whispered. Mia closed her eyes and let the warmth of his words settle over her. "We didn't just find our voices," she said softly. "We helped others find theirs too." The platform wasn't just a website, it was a symbol of resilience, kindness, and hope. And though their journey had begun with an unexpected challenge, it had led them to something extraordinary. A movement that was lifting others and changing lives, one story at a time. A month had passed since the launch of Your Voice, Our Strength, and life had shifted in ways Aaron and Mia never imagined. Their platform was no longer just a small project, it had grown into a national conversation about accountability, fairness, and dignity. News outlets picked up their story, advocacy groups reached out for collaborations, and thousands of users were sharing their stories every week. But with growth came challenges. One morning, as Aaron sat at the dining table with his laptop, he frowned at the screen. "Mia, you need to see this," he said, his tone uneasy. Mia walked over with her coffee and leaned in to read the email. It was from a large retailer who had been named in several stories shared on their platform. The email was formal but defensive. "We believe the claims made against our company are unfounded and damaging to our reputation. We request that you remove posts related to these incidents, or we will be forced to take legal action." Mia sighed. setting down her coffee. "They are trying to intimidate us," she said. Aaron nodded, his jaw tightening. "They think if they threaten us, we will back down." Mia's eyes sharpened with resolve. "We knew this could happen. But we are not silencing anyone just because it makes a company uncomfortable. We created this platform so people can speak the truth." Aaron reached for his phone. "I am calling Carlos," he said, referring to the civil rights lawyer who had volunteered to support them. Within minutes, Carlos was on the line. His calm, steady voice reassured them. "This kind of response is common," he explained, "but you are within your rights as long as the platform is transparent and protects users from harassment. Do not let them scare you. We will handle this together." Aaron let out a slow breath. "Thanks, Carlos. That means a lot." After the call ended, Mia turned to Aaron. "We are stronger than this," she said firmly. "We will not back down." Aaron gave her a grateful smile. "No, we won't." A few days later, the platform was flooded with messages of support after word got out about the retailer's threat. One user posted, "We stand with you, Aaron and Mia. Don't let them silence us. Our stories matter." Another comment read, "This platform saved me when I felt alone. You're fighting for all of us. Thank you." Mia blinked back tears as she read the messages aloud to Aaron. "They believe in us," she whispered. Aaron wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Because they know we believe in them too." A month after the news segment aired, Aaron and Mia were invited to speak at a community panel focused on racial justice and corporate accountability. The event was held in a packed auditorium, with attendees ranging from students to seasoned activists. As they stepped onto the stage, Mia felt a wave of nervous energy. But when she looked out at the audience, at the faces filled with hope and curiosity, her nerves settled. Aaron stood beside her, calm and steady, as they approached the microphones. Aaron spoke first, his voice steady. "Our journey started with something small, a moment on a plane. But that moment opened our eyes to something bigger. How easily people can be made to feel invisible, and how often those stories go untold." Mia stepped forward, her voice clear. "We created your voice, our strength, because we were tired of silence. We wanted to create a place where people could speak up and know they were not alone. And we have learned something important. When we speak up together, change is possible." The audience erupted in applause, some people standing and cheering. Aaron glanced at Mia, his heart full. They had taken something painful and transformed it into a movement fueled by resilience, courage, and hope. That evening, back at home, Mia and Aaron curled up on the couch, their energy drained, but their spirits full. The living room was quiet, except for the soft hum of the dishwasher in the kitchen. Mia rested her head on Aaron's shoulder. "Can you believe how far we've come?" she murmured. Aaron chuckled. "It feels surreal," he admitted. "But in a good way." Mia's voice softened. "I keep thinking about how scared we were when all of this started. And now, look at us." Aaron kissed the top of her head. "We didn't let fear win," he said. "That's the difference." Mia smiled. "And we didn't do it alone." Aaron nodded. "No, we had each other. And now, we've built a community where no one has to feel alone again." The weeks that followed felt like a steady current of progress. More companies reached out, not to threaten legal action, but to seek advice on how to improve their policies and train their staff. Mia and Aaron collaborated with other advocacy groups to create educational resources that businesses could implement across industries. One morning, Mia received an email that made her heart skip a beat. It was from the airline that had been the catalyst for everything. "Dear Mia and Aaron Walker, we are pleased to inform you that, thanks to your feedback and involvement, we have completed the overhaul of our employee training program. We are also implementing a new passenger support system that ensures concerns are addressed with care and transparency. Your voices helped make this possible. Thank you for holding us accountable and for showing us the importance of meaningful change." Mia read the email aloud, her voice trembling with emotion. Aaron smiled and reached for her hand. "We did it," he said softly. Mia nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "We really did." Months later, on an early spring afternoon, Aaron and Mia took a walk through their favorite park. The air was crisp and the trees swayed gently in the breeze. They paused at a bench overlooking the lake, watching the sunlight ripple across the water. Mia slipped her hand into Aaron's. "Do you think we'll ever stop fighting for this?" she asked. Aaron shook his head. "No," he said, "but I don't think we'll ever want to. This is who we are now." Mia's smile was warm, her heart steady. "I'm okay with that." Aaron leaned in and kissed her temple. "Me too." As they sat together, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the world around them, they felt a profound sense of peace. Their journey had been long and filled with challenges, but they had never lost sight of what mattered most: kindness, resilience, and hope. Their story was no longer just their own. It belonged to everyone who had ever felt unheard and had found the strength to speak up. The world hadn't changed overnight, but it was changing one voice at a time. And as Aaron and Mia sat hand in hand, they knew with certainty that they had made a lasting difference. They had become more than just advocates. They had become builders of a stronger, more compassionate world, and they were just getting started. Aaron and Mia's story didn't end, it became a part of something much bigger. Their determination sparked a movement that reached beyond anything they had ever imagined. But most importantly, it reminded everyone watching that even in moments of pain, there is the power to create change, to lift others up, and to rewrite the narrative with resilience, courage, and hope. As they continued their work, Aaron and Mia knew that their journey was just one chapter in a much larger story. And in that story, there was room for every voice, every experience, and every triumph. If you've ever felt unheard, know that your voice matters. If you've ever felt alone, know that you're not. Together, we can make the world kinder, stronger, and more just, one step at a time. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. If this story inspired you, please like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss more stories of hope and perseverance. Your support means everything to us, and we can't wait to continue this journey with you. See you in the next story, in the